Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stories Worth Hearing, where I get to interview women who are on a mission to create. Hi, I'm Denise Hansard, your host and life architect. So today I am interviewing and going deeper with someone we had on before, Jorie Houlihan, the ADHD coach. I'm just going to put it that way, life coach working with ADHD women who have found out in a later life. So Jorie, I'll put your bio and everything down below, not downstairs, but down below in the description box, whatever. But I just want to jump right in because I want to make sure that everybody gets to hear. We wanted to talk today about taking it further on what is ADHD in a later adult life? How does it show up? Just go ahead, jump right in. Give us the educational format of it.
Okay, so ADHD is one of the most misnamed conditions out there because it implies that we have a deficit of attention and that we are running around like toddlers on too much sugar. And the reality is that it's a self-regulation issue. Our brain actually wants to pay attention to everything. The hyperactivity is actually because our brains are understimulated, and it's our way of trying to stimulate the brain. There is a lack of dopamine, and dopamine is the reward drug. So that's the thing that gets you to do the thing. And it also converts into norepinephrine, which is one of the things that triggers the frontal lobe to start working. And the frontal lobe has a lot of different aspects to it, one of which is that it works as a filter. So because we're inundated with information all day, the frontal lobe takes a lot of that information and just stores it somewhere else that our conscious brain doesn't really need to know about. And then what gets through is important, and that's what we need to be paying attention to. But with people with ADHD, because we have the deficit in dopamine, we don't have as much of the norepinephrine. So our frontal lobe doesn't fire as well. And so way more gets through. And the rest of your brain, though, is going, oh, that got through. It must be important. And so that's one of the reasons that I believe we have like shiny object syndrome. It's like, oh, and that. Oh, and that. Oh, I got to pay attention to that because our brain is just paying attention to everything. And it's also the prefrontal cortex is where a lot of executive functioning is held. So executive functioning is things like being able to initiate or follow through on tasks, time management, being able to prioritize, being able to organize and execute tasks, among many different things. And so if those are not stimulated enough, if those are not working properly, that is one of the reasons that we have so many issues. For
I have
people
to pause. Yeah, I want to pause right here for just a minute and say thank you because I've
Yeah.
never heard that such simplistic definition of it. And it makes so much sense right now.
Yeah.
So thank you. Keep going.
Yeah, of course. And there's way more to it than that, but that's kind of the big chunk of it that I tend to talk about. Because it shows up so differently in everybody, though, that's one of the things that makes it complicated. And because the traits are very often, especially in women, are seen more as character traits or character flaws, if I'm being honest. That's why girls are missed so much in school. There's literally like boomers, Gen X, and millennials right now there's a ton of women in those generations that are finding out that they have ADHD now. And it's suddenly their lives are starting to make sense. And one of the things that I am really passionate about is making sure that we educate people on what ADHD is and what it can look like so that girls can get caught when they're younger instead of waiting until they're, older and have horrible self-esteem and self-confidence.
So you're saying there's a difference in how it shows up in the masculine male energy, male gender, as opposed to the female gender.
Yes. For boys, it shows up as very outward and disruptive. And that's one of the reasons that they're caught early, right? And everyone goes, oh, this kid probably has ADHD, and everybody kind of, circles the kid, and we got to support this kid, and boom.
Yeah, so they
then
view it as running around, just screaming at the top of their head, can't be focused, and it's difficult to bring them down to that
yes.
whatever.
And eh, whereas with girls, their hyperactivity may look more like they're really talkative. They're like the chatty Cathy. Maybe the bouncing leg. I used to chew on pencils all the time. That's kind of stuff, hair twirling.
Yes.
Girls and women tend to actually have the inattentive presentation. There's three different presentations of ADHD. So there's inattentive, which is, I think, the former ADD, and then the hyperactive impulsive, and then combined type, where you have enough markers from both of them to have that. And I have combined type, but most women are inattentive. And so with inattentive, that they are daydreamy and they doodle a lot and their minds wander and they make careless mistakes, right? So people just say, oh, you're just so careless. You're just so messy, you know? And so that's the identity you take on.
Yeah.
And girls learn to mask from like conception, basically, anything that isn't socially acceptable. And there's a lot about ADHD that is probably viewed that way. And because we're good at masking a lot of our symptoms. And so that's the other reason that girls are not caught as early.
And for boys,
Girls,
it's probably looked at as, oh, he's just a boy.
boys will be boys.
Yeah.
And so while boys' symptoms are more outward and disruptive, girls' symptoms are more inward and destructive.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that just breaks my heart, is knowing how much potential has been left on the table because girls and women are missed so much and have not been able to live up to their potential. And knowing just what I used to say to myself, right? And I was fortunate that I didn't have parents saying those things to me. They maybe occasionally would call me lazy, but like they were probably exasperated. But there are people whose families are mean about it. So they're getting it from people that they love more than anything, and they just take on those identities as their own eventually. So, you know, it's really heartbreaking to see these women who were very much like me when they get diagnosed and they just go, oh, there's so much more I could have done with my life. Why didn't anybody listen to me? Why didn't anybody see this?
Yeah.
And that is, you know, where therapy and coaching comes into play, because we can help them. The therapy can work on like all the stuff in the past, a lot of the emotional stuff, because ADHD tends to come with things like depression and anxiety. Often they're side effects of untreated ADHD, but very often they become their own beast, so to speak. As a coach, I can't deal with any of that stuff, but I can help them work on their narratives now and moving forward. And I get to help them work on their executive functioning skills and helping them to figure out, okay, let's see how your brain works. What are things that you respond well to? Do you respond to visual cues, auditory cues? Do you need like the vibration of your watch like I do? I need all three because eventually I stop seeing or hearing or feeling the thing. So I need, you know,
But tell me
so,
about the watch.
oh yeah. So I have an Apple Watch. And in my opinion, Apple Watches, if it was not made by somebody with ADHD, was made for somebody with ADHD. It connects to my phone and my computer. So every time I have an appointment, it will ding and vibrate and a little notification will come up. My reminders come up on it. Any kind of like anything that's got a timer essentially to it will come up with that. And so it's really great for me to not miss appointments, for example. So one of my things is I have 3 reminders for every appointment because otherwise I will forget. And so if I don't have my phone with me, then my watch says, hey, you have an appointment coming up, you know?
Yeah.
And so the more that you can really learn like things that will motivate you to do things, what definitely doesn't motivate you to do things, learning how to, what I say, call taking the big pause. Because impulse control, even if you are not diagnosed with hyperactive or combined type, there's usually still an element of impulse control issues somewhere in there.
Yep.
And so, for example, impulse spending can be a
Mm.
part of ADHD. Impulse eating, binge eating, grazing can all be parts of ADHD. And so the more you start to learn where that shows up for you, you can then make a better plan in terms of, so often we try to make goals to try and fix an aspect of our ADHD that can't be fixed per se. And what I have found to be a better solution is to create supports around whatever that challenge is so that it's not as challenging
Mhm.
by using my strengths, right? So like I said before, I'm a creative problem solver, and I am really a big fan of using tools. We were taught from a young age, don't use tools, stop counting on your fingers, don't use a calculator, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And for people with poor working memory, which is also part of executive functioning, like I am that person. I've been making macaroni and cheese for like 50 years now. I still will throw the box away and still have to go back like 5 times to read the directions because I just don't retain it.
Yeah.
So it's like, how long have I been making this? So anyway, so I tell people now, like, you're an adult. You can use whatever tools you want.
Yes.
And, I had one client, she just could not remember to put her keys in this one spot. So I was like, we're going to go get a poster board, and you're going to put it right there that says, put keys in here now, whatever you need to do, with an arrow down to the thing. And she's like, this is ridiculous. And she was worried about what people would think, which I
Right.
get. And I said, I can almost guarantee you somebody's going to see that and go, oh, I should probably do that. You're giving them permission. And so, but she did it. And then it got her to the point where she didn't need it anymore. And she was it just now was habit, right? She was able to do that. But creating habits for people with ADHD is just different than it is for a typical person, because we don't have good working memory, and we just don't remember things the same way that other people do. We're
Yeah.
really good. The 4 things that get us to do things is if we are interested in it, if it is urgent, challenging, or if it is novel.
I like
Those are
that.
the things that will get us to do things more
Yeah.
than anything else. But so that's why, like, if you were that person who waited till the night before your term paper was due to start writing it, because now it's urgent and it's challenging, right? So,
To get
it's
that dopamine hit.
yes.
Yeah.
And people will sometimes start arguments, not
Mhm.
realizing that it's causing it, that also gives you dopamine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, I want sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, and
No,
I
it's
know
okay.
that's yeah. So, there's a stigmatism around
Mm,
ADHD. And again, I think it is more prevalent for women than maybe for boys, because boys will be boys and maybe they don't get diagnosed. And I'm not diminishing anything on between the genders. What do you see changing today, or if it is, or what can we do to change it? Number one, you're doing it because you're educating, but what
yes.
more?
You know, we still, I think, because more and more women in particular are being diagnosed, I think that there's more information that's getting out there. I think doctors and therapists who were not at one point very well versed in ADHD are realizing, oh, I might want to brush up on those skills a little bit. Um, but as you mentioned, women have to work a lot harder just to even get assessed. I don't have statistics on this. I just go by, it's all anecdotal, but
Mhm.
women are accused of drug seeking more than men typically are, because they want the drugs so they can get skinny or do more housework, because that's the kind of stuff we live for. And 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 so, and it makes women really nervous because they know this going in, and so it makes them nervous, which I'm sure doesn't help anything either.
Mhm.
um and I For people who don't really understand what this is, I do encourage you to really go and investigate, and don't just assume that somebody's being lazy and using it as an excuse. Because people with ADHD have a harder time holding jobs. They have a harder time with housing. They have a harder time. They die an average of 13 years earlier, untreated ADHD or undertreated.
Oh,
um, there's a lot of serious ramifications that can come if you are not getting what you need in order to work with it. Time blindness is a really big aspect of ADHD.
Mhm.
So for people who are always late, I don't think you have to have ADHD to have time blindness, but time blindness is a very big
Common.
thing in ADHD. And so, you know, I have time blindness in the other direction where I'm chronically early for everything because I have a huge amount of anxiety about time. Um, but I still do not, I still struggle on understanding how long things take to do.
Mhm.
And it's because there's a part of the brain, and I apologize, I can't remember what part of the brain it is, but it counts how many times your heart beats in a minute. And that is how most people feel time passing. Our brains don't do that. Or if it does, time passes much slower for us for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
that's why people think that they can fit 30 minutes of activities into 5 minutes because their 5 minutes feels like 30 minutes to them.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and yeah, so, and so it definitely impacts, you know, if I think, oh, this thing's gonna, I go the other direction where I think something that will legitimately only take 15 minutes, I think will take an hour and a half. And so then I go, well, I can't start that now because I don't have time. Right. And so um, there's just so much to it. It's so much more
Mhm.
than being forgetful and like losing your keys all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's just so much more than that.
Yeah. So, oh God, this is great. Number one, I want you to seek out and do a TEDx talk on this. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm giving you an assignment.
Okay.
Because this is, I mean, it's so needed, this education. It's like when you were talking about the parents who are being meanest to their children. There are many parents out there that they don't understand it. And so they kind of, lash out, not understanding why their children are doing something like this,
Hmm.
and that's what we've got to get in a lot of different ways, but especially this is educating ourselves on it and taking, I love the pause moment, not just for anyone, but for everyone to take a pause moment and get curious about what do I not know? What's going on here? And taking that moment. So,
Yeah.
um,
I tell my clients that all the time. When something is not quite jiving something that we're trying for them, and I'm like, don't judge, just be curious. Say, okay, what's
being
going on here? What happened right before this?
Mhm.
You know, and let's just be curious about it. And
Mm,
it just takes the judgment out. And it really then opens up better solutions to come to you because you're not sitting there berating yourself. And same with what you're saying for people who are just wanting to learn about it. If you're really open to learning, you're going to learn so much more than you ever realized um, in terms of what this really is.
mhm.
And then you can be um, a better support system for the people in your life who have it. And by the way, it's also very, very heritable. So if one parent has it, generally speaking, at least one of the kids usually has it. I
Mhm.
have it, both my kids have it. Um, and it's all over my husband's side too. He doesn't have it, but my kids didn't stand a chance. They just didn't. And I know what's going on and I still get frustrated with them. So you can imagine when people don't know what's going on, like how frustrating it can be. So
Definitely. Oh, good. Jory, this has been fabulous. And any one last parting thought, comment, more?
yeah, I would say for people who still give people the benefit of the doubt, if somebody's coming to you and saying, I think I have ADHD, be supportive and say, oh, maybe you should get assessed. Don't say things like, oh, everybody has a little ADHD, because no, that's not true. Um, and it brings them down and it keeps them from getting the help that they need. So just even if you don't believe it's a real thing, still just be supportive of the person because they're struggling and they're looking for help and your support may be the thing that helps them get it.
Mm. Thank you, Jory. Everybody, I have all of Jory's information on how you can connect with her down in the description box. And you do have a YouTube channel
I do.
that,
I just started it, so it's still I'm getting there, but it's getting there.
it's a beginning. At least you can jump in whenever you want to and give that wonderful information that you have on it and help other people, because that's why we do what we do
Yeah.
and everything. Yeah. So thank you again. And
Thank you very much for letting me talk about this because
uh,
I just love educating people about it. So
And it's very much needed. So again, thanks. Everyone, now you know, because you didn't know before, or maybe you had an inkling, but now you know. And so just keep being curious about it, seeking out, wondering how you might can help make things better, just as Jorie has talked about. So please like, share, and describe. I'm not describe, subscribe. There's my ADHD. So, guys, this is a message that's extremely important to share out. Please share to everyone. And I can't wait to see you again. Until next time. See you later.